Welcome back, Kathryn, to the Alopecia Angel podcast. I'm so excited you're here. Round 2 of astrology, human design, and so much more, because there is so much to talk about. As we are recording, a lot of things are happening around in the collective, in the world. In many ways, I think astrology has pointed their fingers to these situations politically, economically, and all the topics that are hot right now in today's day. So let's just jump right in. We know who you are. We know that you love astrology and human design. So what does that mean for people?
So we're going through what I call a massive transition and have been for a while. And I think a lot of people have felt it. If you're into human design at all, or if you're not, Ra Ruhu, who channeled the whole system back in the day, had a prediction that in 2027, we would be leaving a 400-year era. So leaving the cross of planning and moving into what they're calling this cross of the sleeping phoenix. And what the cross of planning really is, the whole idea of homogenization. So in order for us to feel safe and to feel belonging, we fit in. We fit in based on collective constructs or societal norms, like go to school, get married, have kids, measure up in a certain level of status, professional career, get paid well, yada, yada. And we felt safe in that. So we followed that path. But now we're shifting into the cross of the sleeping phoenix come 2027. That is actually dismantling everything we knew about fitting in and homogenization. We're shifting into what they're calling differentiation, which we're starting to see this, I think, play out in many ways. But the idea of if we're not living our authentic self and that authentic truth, we're actually going to feel like that's a lot more of a discomfort than it was to fit in. So we're seeing a lot of these things play out with AI, for example. What's real, what's not. Everything sounds the same. What do I believe? We're starting to see these identity crises, and then we're seeing on a global scale things playing out that people are going, what can I believe? Is this person telling the truth? Is this political party telling the truth? Is the media telling the truth? We're starting to see all of that. What do I believe anymore? And so it's creating a lot of internal chaos.
So you keep talking about how we're entering the era of the sleeping phoenix. What does this era actually look like? What would be the good, bad, and the ugly of it?
Great question. I think that we're entering into what we call the differentiation or individuation, meaning as an individual, we're going to want to live our authentic self and our authentic truth. We're not going to follow the same paths of success, like the idea of chasing maybe money or whatever. That's not going to be something that we all collectively strive for. So the definition of success is going to change. The definition of what we attribute to being healthy, that's going to start to crumble. It's going to be what's true to us. So when I think of even just your company, Alopecia Angel, right? It's not a cookie cutter, one size fits all approach. It's very personalized. That is going to thrive in the cross of the sleeping phoenix because people are tired of buying into a one size fits all approach to success, health, wealth, love. We want to do things differently, but what's unique to us and what our unique systems will thrive on. So the good part of that is I think that we're all going to live in alignment. I know that sounds very sort of cliche, but we're going to come home to ourselves and live true to ourselves. What I see happening in the interim, though, the ugly, is I think we're going to clash more as a society as a result of that.
And what would the good out of all this come out?
I think the good is that we're going to connect individually back to what actually matters to us. So we're no longer going to chase these hollow paths to success. Like once I get to that height of success, I'm going to be happy. Or once I reach this destination, my life will change. I think we're going to start to enjoy the process of living, like actually living our lives. We might get off of social media. That's one prediction people are making, that we're going to see a lot of people exit social media because we can no longer really trust what's true because of AI and because of deep fakes and videos out there now and impersonations and all the things. We're going to see people come back to, I think, a place of presence and what is right in front of me, what matters now in this moment, relationships, our health, our well-being. Like we're going to see a lot of people start to focus on that part of their life. What do I really truly have is my health and relationships in a lot of ways.
Having health is priceless. It really is. Anytime I go through even a common cold, a kitty cold, as I like to say it, even if I go through a kitty cold, I'm like, this is priceless. Not to have to feel the drippy nose or the headache or the fatigue or the lack of a voice or the coughing or the sneezing incessantly or whatever. Even a cold. Health is priceless when it comes to when it's taken away. And so what other things do you think would be taken away during this transition?
The stripping. Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of stripping down to the bare, I don't want to say bare minimum, but simplicity in a lot of ways. It doesn't mean we're going back to the time of horse and buggy. That's not what I'm saying. I think we're going to be shifting back down to priorities, what matter to us and what our values are. Like, what is my values? What are your values? And then universally, what does that look like? I think we've gotten so far away from what our values are. I think the shadow side of all of this, what we're going to see is like this rise of AI and how that plays out in our society. For a lot of us, we're going to have to start thinking critically. We're going to have to start becoming more discerning. I think we've lost that muscle of critical thought and nuance and being able to hold complexity. So cultivating inner resilience, being stable and rock solid on who you are and what you stand for, what your values are, and not allowing the outside world to rock your boat. So it's like the Buddha meditating in Times Square is the image I see, is like we've all got to come back to our own inner resilience and cultivate that, because there's going to be so much out there that's going to try to distract us away from our true essence, I believe.
That's incredible. So this energy, you said that people are waking up. And what exactly are they waking up to? Is this a new reality? Is this a new era? Is this a new generation? Is this a new, I don't know, way of the future?
100%. And honestly, like I get glimpses of what it's going to look like in maybe the more nearest future, but I also think that like none of us really know what it's going to be. But when I think of like things stripping away our definition of what success is, or what we attribute as healthy, or maybe some of the bad habits that we have, like where we're putting our attention, or we glued to our phones, what news are we watching, what are we consuming? I think people are going to get so radical about that, where they're giving their attention, but also where they're giving their money and where they're giving their time. There's going to be that radical sense. I also think that people are going to probably connect more to maybe their like soul's gift. And again, that might sound cliche, but who are they at a soul level? And that might look drastically different than having a career or owning a business or building a business. I think there's going to be a lot of things that come online that we maybe didn't even expect. Things that might not seem mainstream right now, but are going to become very much mainstream in 2027 and beyond. But as of January 1st, 2027, it's not like the light switch is going to go on. It's not like Y2K where we all expected the world to end when New Year's hit. It's like, it's going to take time. And so to me, as an adult in middle age, it's what does this look like for the rest of my life? And then if I have kids, what does this look for my kids, and how am I raising them in this world that is gonna, in a world that I've never lived in and don't even know what it's going to look like? How do I prepare them for that cross of the sleeping phoenix in this new era? Because I think the way we interact with technology, all of it is going to change. Yeah.
So this era of the sleeping phoenix, until when is it? Is it like a year of feng shui, or is this a year of, or a month, or is this 10-year cycle? What is this?
I don't know the precise length of it, but I'm looking at like the next 400 years. We're looking at multiple decades. Yeah. Collectively, all of the outer planets in astrology have shifted or will be shifting this year. And they range between 8 years to like the next 20 some years. They're like slow moving planets. So Pluto, Uranus, and Neptune have all shifted, and they're going to sit at a minimum for the next 8 years, which they all come with collective themes. Neptune being the planet of dissolving. There's going to be a lot of things that dissolve, particularly where it's sitting in the house system that it falls in your chart.
It's fascinating. As a youngster, I would have fun with astrology, looking at what my monthly astrology said in the magazine or something or other. And then as I got older, it just look like their presence was ever more,
Yeah.
whether through constellations or whether through guidance. But then even in ancient history, it was also used by different tribes, different communities, peoples, Egyptians, like you name it, the Incas, like everyone has used the solar system to guide them to their benefit. It was almost like their own rustic farmer's almanac of sorts. And now it's just so present and it's right on target almost. And you sense these things. And when people can read, which I've started to notice more, there's more people talking about astrology. And because when they do talk about it, then you're like, at least for me, I contemplate, I consider it, and I wait and see. And normally when I wait and see, it actually does happen. Maybe not necessarily. It's not the type of astrology where you're going to find a penny on the street. No, it's more of there's going to be feelings of this and that. And when I hear you speak, I can almost sense that there would be a lot of uncertainty through the listener, through anyone who's listening to this. What is this going around? How come I've never heard of this? How come I'm sleeping primarily through this new era? So I guess going fast forward, what are some of the tips that you would say to somebody listening to this and who's, I want to lean in, but I don't know where to start?
Yeah, great question. And this year, 2026, Richard Rudd, who's the founder of the Gene Keys, is saying that this is the year of the closing door. I know we just came out of the year of the snake, if you guys are familiar with that, and there was probably a lot of shedding that happened then, but it's very timely, right? This year, 2026, is what he's calling the closing of the door, which means this era is closing. And so if this is the first time you're hearing about it, my tip and only tip is to get radical about what are you doing in your life that is not in alignment with you and your desires and what you want. Is that a relationship? Is that your health habits? Is that you're conforming to something that you thought you had to, a level of success, a career, a business, whatever it is? Alignment doesn't mean that it's just pure flow and you never have an obstacle or a challenge. That's not what I'm saying. It's that you are true to yourself. So for example, if you became a doctor because you were following your parents' footsteps and that what you needed to do, and you know that like you're meant for something more or something different, follow those breadcrumbs of curiosity. Follow the things that might not make sense where you're like, I want to simplify my health and wellness this year, or I want to enhance my love relationships, or I want to start baking sourdough bread. I use this analogy because I think it's funny. If I'm curious about making sourdough bread, what if in 10 years from now there's a bread shortage and I've got like this beautiful sourdough starter in my fridge and I become the bread person that everybody comes to get their bread? Like sometimes we don't know the path of, we don't know that this left field insight. And that's really what the crux of the Sleeping Phoenix is asking us to do, is follow these points of differentiation that may or may not make any sense in the moment and or not feel connected to what we're doing right now in this moment. And then get radically clear of saying no to anything that does not feel in alignment anymore.
Saying no is huge. I think that's something we could all use more often, is in order to protect ourselves, in order to establish ourselves, be true to ourselves, live in integrity, be in integrity, is to say no. And I will say, when it comes to health and wellness, what I have noticed is that when people take shortcuts, it normally bites them back in the butt. I say this with a lot of love, but when people come to me and they're like, look, I'm going bald and this is happening, but I'm also on a GLP-1 drug, or I'm also on JAK inhibitors, or I'm doing this and that. None of these things are moving the needle. None of these things are going to heal them. And so it's a shortcut. And I think if we can all see what these shortcuts and these, again, the one size fits all approaches and gimmicks, if we can see right through this, then I think we would get closer to the end goal a lot sooner. And I think that's the awakening that I would see in this era, in this new era that we're entering. What other awakening would we wake up?
I think it's the dismantling of like our own identity and what we define, how we define ourselves of being of value to like the collective. So for example, traditionally or in a homogenized world, it was like this, you became value when you produce something, right? I write copy, I do marketing, I do an astrology reading, and the value is in me being able to give you insight in some way, shape, or form, or deliver a product, right? That's dismantling our whole idea of what value is and what being of value is. So the exchange, and I think this is maybe more long term, but I think the way in which we exchange value is going to change. And so if your identity is wrapped up in, I'm a doctor, I'm a lawyer, I'm a dentist, I'm a marketer, this stuff is going to start to dissolve, and you're going to have an identity crisis is basically what it is. So it's starting to separate ourselves from what we do and align ourselves with who we be.
It sounds like a midlife crisis, but for everyone on the planet, doesn't it?
Yes.
So for those people who don't know about human design or gene keys, can you give us a little synopsis of what this is? I think the collective does understand astrology to a certain degree. On the last episode, we talked about relocation astrology, or essentially where it's best for you to live, for you to thrive, health, wealth, and beyond. But gene keys, human design, these topics, these are acts of science, really, personality differentiators that maybe not too many people have heard of.
So human design is another system. It's probably a more modern system than astrology. Astrology was something that, like you said, ancient people were using as predictors and whatnot. Human design was something that came on more modern in the modern era, and it really is the mechanics of self. So it's really designed to give you a blueprint of who you are. It's just through the lens of astrology and their system. It's still very strategic and intellectual in that it's like that blueprint where it's telling you like who you are, what you're here to do, that sort of thing. And it's using your birth date and time and all those sorts of things. I find it really mechanical. Like it tells you what your authority is. I'm a manifesting generator. These are all just terms I'm throwing out there, but it still feels very mechanical to me. It's not as embodied, if that makes sense. Whereas Gene Keys built the system off of the human design system, but it's more of a contemplative state. It takes you more through almost like the Kundalini serpent, right? Where it's like taking you through this path of contemplation so that it's more feminine, more embodied, more contemplative, if that makes sense. Human design is really, if you're still very much at a very intellectual, strategic level of consciousness where contemplation or the uncertainty of contemplation feels hard. If you want a system that's, this is who you are, this is what you're here to do, then human design's great because it mechanically does that. But Gene Keys requires you to contemplate the meaning of things in relation to your own lived experience in your life so that you can actually embody that information. So it requires a different level of consciousness. But I like to look at both. But I do love Richard Rudd's system because it's just very poetic. And it's where I'm at in my own self-discovery journey. To me, it's finding a system that works for you, I guess is the best way. Like astrology will probably give you similar insight. It's just whether or not you relate with the system.
It's so fascinating because weeks ago, I got a reading from an astrologer, but it was Chinese astrology. And I thought it was actually just face value, almost like a regular astrology. So if you're born in July, then more than likely, maybe you're a Cancer. And so I thought it was just like that, like face value. So for example, anyone being born now in this year is the horse, right? And so I just thought it was that. You're the horse and that's who you are. But apparently there's like another way to see the outline personalities of how you are in work, in person, through the year, and like through different eras, like every 10-year segment of your personality is. And it also shows different animals. And so it's quite fascinating how many layers all these modalities have. Astrology is not just face value. You have so much going on there. And then you also have the same thing in feng shui, which I just learned about here recently. And then with human design and Gene Keys, it's also very complex. It's not something that we could just chat GPT and understand and get a grip on. I highly personally recommend any of my listeners, if you want more information, this is where you consult with somebody who really knows and who's studied the human design, the Gene Keys, the astrology, or the feng shui, or the Chinese astrology, or what have you, because you could be missing some part of this. You could be not getting the full grasp. I also feel that AI in many ways is a disservice. It's helpful if you want to mindlessly ask for things, but I also think it's a disservice in many ways, because if you ask it, let's say, for example, how to heal alopecia, it's going to give you a bunch of generic stuff. And it's also very superficial. So take that with a grain of salt. Take AI with a grain of salt. It's not the end all be all. And it might give you some valid results, like not to keep certain explosives inside your house. Maybe it needs to be under lock and key off property, something like this. Sure. but that would hold true to everybody around the world. But for certain things that definitely need personalization, understand that seeing the expert is where you need to be in order to get the right information for you. Are there any other tips or advice that you could give to our listeners in regards to, let's say, navigating this new era that's going to start in a year, or even if they wanted to approach somebody for gene keys or human design or astrology?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is it comes down to like self-trust. I think the era that we're moving into is asking us to trust ourselves and that we know the system or the path or the process that is going to feel most aligned for us in this season of life that we're in. And I think when we outsource to something like AI, or we even outsource to astrology or human design, and we're looking for astrology to give us the answers, we're already outsourcing our sovereignty and our power to it. And this new era is saying, we want you to take back your power and sovereignty, and we want you to use the systems that you have to help guide you in your life, but we don't want you going against your own instinct. What I don't ever want someone to do is to go human design, gene keys, astrology, and try to take it all in. Pick a system that you feel aligned with and devote yourself to that system. It has to be a contemplative journey, which is why I love Richard Rudd's stuff, because he's all about contemplation. It's like there's a patience, and I'm impatient. I want the answer now. I want the magic pill, but I know there isn't a magic pill. And I think what this new era is asking us to let go of, there's no magic pill. There's no one size fits all to success or health or whatever, that we have to trust ourselves. We have to learn to trust ourselves.
I've seen that numerous times in my life. I can count them and I know exactly the date and time. And all of a sudden you're given this business card, you're introduced to somebody, you're taken, or somebody tells you over and over, do this, do that, or go see this person, go see that person. When are we going to listen? That's when it's like all these doors started opening. And so I feel like when we're ready, even maybe when we're not ready, that's when, the opportunities appear and when things just start to happen. I'm ready for you when the student wants and when they're willing to learn and when they're willing to get the results that they want without the excuses, with living in integrity, with wanting this for themselves, because that is the first step. And I think that's in anything. We have to want it in order to get what we want.
Yeah. And I do think that it's following when you're ready, and maybe when you're not ready, you're going to be pushed into this initiation, and that teacher will appear 100%. And also sometimes it's the teacher appears and you're like, this is so left field. Why do you want me to learn about medical astrology? I go down these rabbit holes of medical astrology, and I have a business degree and then started to learn astrology. I quote unquote feel like I'm as far left field from learning anything medical. And all of a sudden now it's being presented to me and I'm like, really? Okay, I'll learn it. I don't know where it's going to lead me. So that's, I think, part of the invitation is follow these breadcrumbs, follow the teachers that present themselves in front of you. And it might not make any sense right now, but it will eventually.
That's beautiful. What last words, parting gift can you leave us with before we call it a day?
Don't be scared. I think sometimes when we think of transition, we think of these new eras, we think of these big collective shifts, it can be really easy to get scared and be fearful. Like, what's going to happen? The world's going to end. That's not what it is. And you're going to be okay, I think, is the best thing. This is your invitation to start getting radical about the life that you want to live, and everything else will work out. Yeah.
I think that's beautiful to end on, that we are truly co-creating our life and our future. And if we don't take a stand for what we want, then we're just going to succumb to settling. And it's really a choice. That's one thing that I've always said, is that settling is probably the worst disease of all. It's settling for what people tell us, settling for what people give us, settling for the lack of information, the lack of proof, the lack of this, the lack of that. Go out and do it. Go out and make things happen. Like, we have the power. We really do. The
settling, I think up until this point, people could do it for long periods of time because of the comfort of homogenization, of staying the same and being the same. It's going to get really uncomfortable if we choose to settle in this next era. It's just going to get really uncomfortable. Internally, our system is just not going to be able to sit with that. Thank you so much, Kathryn. You have given us so much information, not just in this podcast episode, in 2 episodes prior. And where can we find you? You can find me at Creatively Owned over on Instagram. My website is creativelyowned.com. That's where I hang out. I hang out most over on Instagram. So come check me out there. Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Alopecia Angel podcast, a positive light in healing alopecia. You can do this and we can help. Spread the word that reversing alopecia is possible by telling your friends and family.